Expectations versus reality. It's the Marshall Thundering Herd.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. You guys have been great. Almost 50 new subscribers last week. I have a goal of now 600 subscribers by the time we kick it off on Saturday, September 2nd. I think that'll be a great way to kick off the Sunbelt season. So please, if you are watching on YouTube and not yet subscribed, please do so. Please tell all of your other friends that enjoy Sunbelt sports and specifically football, which is coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Sunbelt is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we've been doing these expectations versus reality, and usually the expectations may be a little high. I kind of feel like, even for myself, kind of like Debbie Downer. South Alabama, I have huge expectations, but their four hardest games are all on the road, right? The UL Raging Cajuns have their quarterback back, but he's never played a full season, and he's coming off a knee surgery, and they have a tough schedule. Yeah, it's kind of been like that, right? A little bit like that. But now I think we may be going in the opposite direction. We'll see, because here expectations for Marshall are a little bit low. And they're the ones with the quarterback back. We don't know who JMU's quarterback is going to be. At least I haven't seen it yet. Todd Centeio was outstanding last year. Gone. We don't know who App State's quarterback is going to be. Chase Bryce. Gone. We do know, and we've mentioned this before, how Grayson McCall is being, well, flat out disrespected by the Sunbelt coaches, having Coastal Carolina third. So Marshall is in fourth, and they had, let's recap a little bit about last year, because they had kind of an up and down, and it certainly finished up kind of season, right? They beat Norfolk State, all right, but then they upset Notre Dame, yay. But then they lose their offensive line coach, and they lose to Bowling Green in overtime. Then they lose to Troy 16-7. They beat Gardner-Webb, but lose to the Cajuns. And now they've all of a sudden lost 3 out of 4 ball games. And that's after beating Notre Dame. And so they had Henry Colombi as the quarterback. And I think Fancher came in against the Cajuns, and they could have very easily won that. I don't want to say easily. They could have won that football game. They lost 23-13, but the play that changed the game was one of the Marshall special teamers lined up over the center and rushed the punter, which you cannot do. And so instead of taking the ball over, the Cajuns ended up with the ball and I believe scored a touchdown. And that basically changed the football game. All right. Having said that, they did beat James Madison. And that may have been without Todd Centeio, as it turns out. He was banged up for a couple of ball games. Yeah, Atkins played for James Madison. Nonetheless, they held that high-scoring offense to 12 points. They did lose to Coastal at home. A little bit of a disappointing loss. But then, field goal, Old Dominion. I want to make sure that was 4 field goals. 12-0. Fancher had a couple of interceptions in that case, and it was 4 field goals. But how about the defense? Blanks Old Dominion. They beat App State at home, 28-21. Go on the road, hold Georgia Southern to 23-10, and win that ball game. And then they beat Georgia State. So, I mean, they went from 2-0 with a top 10 victory to 4-4. Losing some ball games maybe they should not have lost. And so, where are the expectations, right? They did finish up with a win against UConn. Again, Fancher he threw for 93 yards against UConn in the bowl game. So not a huge victory there. A couple of touchdowns that have not victory, but not a huge day for him. 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown. Rasheen Ali, 15 carries, 92 yards in that ball game. All right, so nonetheless, Cam Fancher started out his career, not including the Cajuns game, started out his career 5-1 as a starter. Now, it's hard to suggest that you're going to be able to, repeat that on a somewhat regular basis, but you have to believe he's going to take that next step. And what I liked about Charles Huff, he brought Cam Fancher to Sunbelt Media Days, right? All these other places that have quarterback competitions, they did not. We did not get a Texas State quarterback. We did not get, who else do we have? A Southern Miss quarterback, right? We did not get an App State quarterback there. And Charles Huff was saying, look, if we're starting a game today, Cam Fancher's our guy. Now, he's got to go out there and win the job, so things can change, obviously, but we're going to go with him right now. And so you would think that Cam would maybe take that next step. It doesn't have to be a huge step, but you're not going to win, too many, let's be honest. You're not going to win too many ball games throwing for 93 yards in a game, okay? So Cam, 55% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Let's see rushing last year. See if we can get all the rushing stats in there. Rushed for over 450 yards and 1 score. He did rush 136 yards against ODU. So he does add that to the offense for Marshall. But, you want to see him, closer to 60%. Boy, 20 touchdowns is just not a lot these days, right? I mean, Bryce Young, and not to make that comparison, but, his Heisman Trophy was like 48, right? And Joe Burrow was putting up huge numbers as well. So in today's college football landscape, you really got to put up at least 20 to 24 touchdowns. And then you got to keep those interceptions where they are. You certainly don't want to double that. All right. That is absolutely not what you want to do. All right. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. Sorry for the slight interruption. All right, when we come back, let's dive into it. Let's look at the schedule, as it's an interesting schedule that Marshall has. There doesn't appear to be too many cupcakes, especially in the Sunbelt Conference. So they have a chance to, and they're going to find out, playing a couple of Power 5 teams in the first half of the season, where their positives are, where they still have to work on some things. And then eventually we'll get into replacing Lance Skidry, who didn't have 1 job in the offseason. He had 2 jobs in the offseason. How do you give notice to the second team or the first team that go and tell, Marshall and Charles Huff, look, I got a job. Oh, okay, go ahead. Go to Tulane. It pays a little bit more. And then about a month later, you're telling, I don't even know if he was there for 2 weeks. Then you're telling Willie Fritz, hey, Willie, Miami called. I got to go down to South Florida. Did he already move? Probably not. But those things happen fast. All right. So we'll do that. We'll talk about the Marshall Thundering Herd schedule. And we still want to talk about, Jason Semore is now the defensive coordinator for Marshall. All right. But let me tell you a little bit about LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the best access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools, like screening questions, make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's look over this schedule because, again, Marshall was picked 4th. Let me see what they finished in the division, in the conference last season. They were 5-3. All right. Losers to Troy and the Cajuns. They actually lost their first 2 Sun Belt ball games. So that means they won 5 of their last 6. Right. They beat they beat James Madison, lost to Coastal, and then reeled off those 4 straight wins: Old Dominion, App State, Georgia Southern, and Georgia State. All right, so now let's see what this year's schedule is. And certainly, you can't get any bigger than Notre Dame in South Bend, right? So it doesn't matter the 2 teams that they're playing now. It's not going to be nearly that big, and one of them is at home. All right, they get Albany. They are hosting Albany. It used to be a Division III school. I guess it's Division I now. That's a SUNY school, the State University of New York, at Albany. They open up with that at home. Then they're at East Carolina. That's the game on ESPNU. They host Virginia Tech. You're going to quickly find out, can you hang with the Virginia Tech, and what's that going to mean for the season? You get Old Dominion at home. Then at NC State, another tester, but I'm not so sure about NC State, right? Their quarterback went to Kentucky, so I'm not so sure about that just yet. Georgia State on the road in Atlanta. James Madison's coming to you. You're at Coastal, at App. Then you get Georgia Southern at home. You do have the tough ball game at South Alabama, and then home versus Arkansas State. So it's kind of all over the place. Never more than 2 games at home or 2 games on the road over a period of time. All right. So maybe if there's not that blip with the offensive line coach taking off, maybe you get the Bowling Green victory. Maybe you play a little bit better against Troy. Who knows? But really, you're looking at a 4-1 start or a 3-1 start heading into NC State. That's not a bad way to go. And I would tell you that Virginia Tech ball game is not a for sure loss, right? I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not exactly sure what Virginia Tech has this season. That could be a win. I mean, they could start out 4-0 heading to NC State. And if they beat Virginia Tech, whether Virginia Tech's up or down, and you're 4-0 heading into NC State, you're in the top 25, or you're certainly getting votes. So even if you lose that ball game on the road in Raleigh, you're 4-1. You get Georgia State. You're at Georgia State. Not really sure about Georgia State this year. Again, I think that's another team that could be a little bit better than we're thinking. Darren Granger is very exciting. Can he take it to the next level? He needs to do that. This is year number 3 for him. This is not Cam Fancher. He's starting. Can he get it to the next level after playing, for a half a season? Granger's been doing it for a while. Can he get it to the next level? Now, you beat James Madison. They're going to remember that. You're at Coastal. It's going to be tough. We don't know about App. They were picked 2nd, but we're wondering about the quarterback still. Georgia Southern at home, and South Alabama and Arkansas State. So, I just happen to think South Alabama is going to be the best team in the conference. Not a whole lot of people. Well, I think a lot of people agree with me, but not the people who are setting the lines and such. So, again, I think that this team can absolutely exceed expectations. If you're picked 4th in the Sun Belt East and you start out the season 4-0, God forbid 5-0, you got a heck of a ride, right? The confidence that Cam Fancher is going to have and the rest of the team is going to have in him if they start off fast. Now, technically, I guess they could start off 1-1, right? Maybe you lose at East Carolina, all right? But let me check out the Pirates. Let's check out the Pirates. See what their schedule was last year. What did they finish up last year? And I know last year doesn't have anything to do with this year. They were pretty good. They actually destroyed Coastal Carolina in the Birmingham Bowl to end the season. They finished up 8-5. That's okay. All right. So that's probably going to be a 3 or 4 point spread to begin the year, right? And they're getting Michigan to begin the season. Whew. So East Carolina's playing Michigan. I mean, how about that schedule for East Carolina? At Michigan, home versus Marshall, at App State. Stay hot. All right. Although we do like all these teams playing each other in the States. I think that's pretty good, or at least, close by is, Marshall is Huntington in West Virginia, and Virginia Tech is in Blacksburg, Virginia, but still right there. So, again, I think they have a shot at exceeding expectations. What that looks like, a lot of it's going to have to do with, do they take down a Virginia Tech? Do they take down an NC State? Do they not lose a coach after a huge upset win over a top 10 team? Right. Although right now there isn't a top 10 team on the slate. So I think that'll be really interesting as, the season gets underway. Do they start out 2-0, or do they start out 1-1? You all of a sudden lose to East Carolina. Now you're like, all right, now Tech is going to be tough. Now we're playing Old Dominion. We got to win that ball game because we could be 1-2, and now you're 2-2. Hopefully, if you're Marshall. So I think this is a team that can absolutely exceed expectations. That's what I think, at least this year, for the Marshall Thundering Herd. All right, let's take one more time out. Let's talk about the defense. All right, let's take one more time out. When we come back, we'll talk about, replacing Lance Guidry, Jason Semore coming in from Georgia Tech, and, Owen Porter is going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting for the Marshall Thundering Herd defense. We'll be back after this on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Again, special thanks to everyone who has participated. Again, on June 1st, we had 256 subscribers. We're over 500 in mid-August. July 27th, we had 369. We're almost, about 170 later. Yeah, outstanding. I know other places have a bunch more subscribers, but we're just building it. It's good to go. And the idea would be, again, try to get to 1,000 before the end of the season. I'm going to be looking to get to 1,000, maybe October. The more subscribers we get and the more videos you guys like and share, the more people see it and the more people will be into subscribing, because a lot of people do enjoy talking about the Sun Belt and seeing what I have to say. So far, I would say the Texas State crew seemed to agree with what I said, and somebody else was agreeing with what I said as well, because, Southern Miss. That was another good one. So we appreciate everybody subscribing. Also, don't forget about the audio portion of the show. You can still subscribe and listen to Locked On Sunbelt on Apple Podcast and on Spotify, among others. Wherever you get your podcasts from, those seem to be the two most popular. So we do appreciate that. That is for sure. All right, let's get back to it. Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Lance Guidry didn't have one job in the offseason. He had two. The Marshall Thundering Herd, one of the top-rated defenses in the country last year, lost their defensive coordinator. I don't think that's any surprise. I think it was a little bit of a surprise that he hopped from Tulane to Miami, although once Miami calls, you got to go. I understand that. But usually you don't see a coordinator get two jobs in the offseason, and that's what happens. Told by Phil Steele, only 4 starters returning for the Marshall defense. One of them is Owen Porter. He's Mr. Everything. They were outstanding up front. They're going to have to do it more with linebackers and corners compared to the defensive line, which were outstanding last year. And, is it a softer defense? Kind of a bend. Softer is such a bad connotation, but it's got a more of a bend but don't break kind of defense. You give up some yards, but you give up field goals instead of touchdowns, or, you give up a couple of yards and then you get after it and maybe, you don't give up any points. So we'll see how that goes for Marshall. But you do get Jason Semore from Georgia Tech. We'll see how that works out. He's still got plenty of talent on the defensive side, but some of the guys are a little bit inexperienced. So we'll see how that goes. Again, I'm a big believer in Charles Huff. He's got the program going in the absolute right direction. Mostly it's about, can Cam take that next step? We're not talking about throwing 70%. We're trying to get it to 60%. And in these days, 60% is the low end, right? It used to be when I grew up, if your quarterback threw for 50% or over that, anything over 50% was great. Now, 60% is about the minimum. Although last year, he was completing 55% of his passes, and he went 5-1 as a starter and a bowl victory. So much for that idea. But to take it to the next step, to get more consistent and to help lead the team to victories, Cam has to do that, has to get closer to 60%, see if he can double his touchdowns while keeping his interceptions the same, and see who steps up for the defense is going to be a lot of fun for Herd fans and Sunbelt fans. And, again, they're going to find out very quickly. A road game at East Carolina is not going to be easy. Then Va-Tech comes into Huntington. That's going to be a blast, right? That's going to be packed. And then after Old Dominion opening up Sunbelt play, which will be interesting in itself, right? You get the Marshall defense versus what ODU is hoping is the Monarchs offense. And then you travel to NC State. So, again, they could be anywhere from 4-0 to 2-2 heading into that NC State game. It was going to be tough sledding for Marshall if they are less than 2-2 heading into the NC State game. If they are 3-1 or 4-0 heading into that Wolfpack game, they got an outstanding shot at exceeding all expectations. And, of course, all these prognostications are, without injury, right? Can't assume an injury. So we just, if it changes because somebody gets hurt, so be it. But that's, we're going with these guys are going to be healthy. Everyone gets banged up somewhere along the way. But for the most part, we're going with the players that they have. All right. Okay. Let's wrap things up. I believe on Tuesday, I don't mind jinxing this. I really don't. We're going to have ULM head coach Terry Bowden scheduled to appear. Schedules change, but scheduled to appear on Tuesday is the head coach of the ULM Warhawks, Terry Bowden, and see how his camp has gone with less than 2 weeks to go before opening day. Okay. Again, special thanks to everybody who's been subscribing. You guys are the best. It's continuing to grow. We'll try to get to 600 before we kick off on Saturday, September 2nd. And then maybe can we get to 1,000 before October 1st? Maybe more realistic is 1,000 before Halloween. Maybe that's the goal. All right. 1,000 subscribers before Halloween. I think that's a legit goal. But the more people we get to subscribe, and it kind of grows exponentially. Instead of 2 or 3 subscribers a day, we're getting 5 or 6, even 10, 16. You do 50 in a week, right? It's going to take, that's 100. It's going to take them. It's going to take 8 weeks. Well, I guess it would take 8 weeks, right? To get to 2, 4. Yeah, it would take 8 weeks to get 400. But maybe it grows even faster than that. Although 50 in 1 week seems to be a lot. All right. I guess the Phil Steele episode helped out a lot. All right. Again, thanks so much. Have a great week. We will be back throughout the week, continuing to preview and see if we get any word on the starting quarterback competitions after everyone had their second scrimmage. I am Dave Schultz, and you've been watching and listening to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.